What up, guys?
So I saw JP Finley tweet a video of the locker room afterwards and kind of the walk to the locker room. There was actually some positive vibes last week.
Oh, yeah.
None of that this week.
None. Quiet, silent. And, there was, for a couple reasons. One, I mean, obviously, listen, man, that's a horrible, horrible loss. I don't think I could probably use a couple more horribles, right? They know that. Like, that was just, honestly, it's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have that with the Zach Ertz injury too. Like, that crushed many of those guys because of how respected he is, and they know what that kind of injury means at his stage in his career, et cetera. So, like, I think that weighed on him, certainly in the locker room. On the walk to the locker room, I just think there's all those factors that come into play. But, like, just you get it's a goose egg, like, that's bad. You're facing a team with an offense that struggled, and they hung up 31 on you. Like, that's bad. So it all adds up. But yeah, like last week or yesterday, Dan Quinn said they took a step forward last week and they took 3 steps back yesterday. And you probably could have added a couple more steps on that one.
It's just so frustrating because, I mean, first and foremost, obviously, Jayden re-aggravating the elbow. Thank God it wasn't anything worse. But even before that, I was like watching it, other than the first drive, which I told the guys, I was telling my buddy who I was watching it with, I was like, oh, what a great response right before him. But then they don't score, so it's kind of frustrating. But I was like, wow, what a great drive. So thankful to have Jayden back. But then after that, just they never, even though they had Terry and Noah Brown and, Jayden, there was no explosion. It was a dud. And then defensively to kind of backtrack again. I mean, just the overall game was just so, it's almost hard to explain. I don't even know how to explain it.
I agree. And I kind of thought after that first drive by the Vikings where they basically the amount of they allowed a quarterback who has been bad, and he, for whatever reason, whether because he's young or he's just not that good, they allowed a young quarterback to gain a lot of confidence on that first drive. And that's when you start thinking, like, you get that they could be in trouble here. And then you fall down 2 scores to that defense, which is very good and very aggressive. And it's just like, that's when you could not afford to get in the hole against them. And they did right away. But like that, and the second drive, even Quinn said, like, after Minnesota second drive, like, that was essentially the ball game.
Yeah.
It's a 98-yard, 12-minute march, again, with a quarterback who has struggled against pretty much everybody else. And he looked like Montana against these guys. And that's where some of those defensive shortcomings come into play. They didn't really want to send any pressure at it, any blitzes. They're limited really to heavy zone coverage, and this guy struggles against man because tight coverage makes it hard on this guy who is inaccurate and gets his mechanics all out of whack. But you didn't see any of that yesterday, and that was to me the brutal part. Like, it's one thing to get picked apart by some of the quarterbacks they face with the Mahomes or guys like that, even Goff and et cetera. But it's another to get picked apart by J.J. McCarthy at this stage in his career.
John, give me your best guess. I know there are going to be medical reports, and who knows, maybe he gets an MRI in the elbow. Your best guess right now, does Jayden start next week at the Giants?
I mean, I don't know. What I even asked Quinn after, like, do you still want to see him play this year? Like, because that's the third game that he's in a row that he's left early. And he said, basically, yes, it's important at this point for his development. So, if there's nothing structurally wrong, and it was just because, as he said, like, they never ruled him out of the game. So I guess I lean toward that, but I can't lean very hard because, one, I don't know enough information, but two, if it certainly caused him some discomfort, whatever, like whether it's re-aggravated, re-injured, or whatever it was, it caused him enough that he stayed on the ground and was clearly very frustrated on the sideline. So that's where I would probably lean, probably not, but I think I kind of went back and forth on that one because I don't know. but
I think if they start doing MRIs and stuff and searching for something, they'll hold them out.
If they start doing MRIs, and I think you're right, they hold them out. But I think like when you look at it,
if it's just a pain tolerance thing, I think they're going to throw them to the wolves because look, it's the NFL.
Right. Well, it is, and one of the first things they did was took out. There was one time they had to adjust the padding on there, et cetera. So I thought that was also a tough defense for him to face in his first game back because of all that blitzes this time. But yeah, I think if you start doing testing on it, then you're just going to you're
looking for something, you'll find it.
Yeah. But otherwise, you're right. If it's a pain tolerance, like a lot of those guys are playing with something like maybe not quite the same, but to some level, they're playing with something.
I think it shows that these guys are so competitive that, once the season starts and they come back from injury, they're never 100%. Like he wasn't 100%, but he's good enough to play, but he wasn't 100%. And it just unfortunately landed right on it, in a kind of an awkward deal.
It was, and unfortunately for him, that's like a couple of times, like the way he fell that got it hurt was a freak kind of flukish play. But, and I think the other thing too is like, I know, he's chasing down an interception and that's the tough one, but that's the competitor part too. And then even Bobby Wagner talks about that. Like you basically want to see your guy doing that because you don't, if he stops running after the guy, then it looks bad.
It's awful. Yeah.
So.
But you know what? He needs to learn a couple things and he knows it, but his competitor instinct maybe prevents him from doing it. He dives head first too often. All right. So you can take a hit there instead of sliding. And then
sliding, you can take a hit too. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You can definitely take a hit in the head. And in some cases, it might be even worse.
And he doesn't go down enough. Like there was, I think on that last drive, he was tackled by 2 or 3 guys. And
he goes down awkwardly. I think we can agree to that.
He was very upright on that one where he was scrambling. And he basically got mauled by 3 guys. And, every Commanders fan was probably bracing themselves like, oh no. And he survived that one, but he didn't survive the next one.
Right. And to me, like part of what it is too, and this is something when you go back and watch the games, like to see like, did you have an option there to throw? And there were a couple of times early in the game. And I wonder when you haven't played as much, he started to become much better last year at keeping his eyes downfield when he started to run and seeing guys and at least keeping the ball alive. Right. But when you haven't played a lot this year and you kind of, maybe you get out of rhythm a little bit with that, I guess, right? Because there were a couple times early where he ran. I'm like, could you have thrown the ball here? Because like Terry's Y is open over here. It's seemingly in line of vision. And could you have, instead of running and taking either a hit or diving or whatever it is, just thrown it to get 15 yards. And so like that's one thing I think as he gets back into the swing of it that I would like to see more of, just because those are the chances for big plays. And then it takes away the possibility of you having to make a play with your legs all the time. He got better last year too at not always running out of bounds and just throwing it away. Like that's the other thing as well. So I think as he gets back into it, I would expect to see some growth there. Because we saw it last year. Yeah. But I think that's another big.
This year's just been a wash because you can't play a game and then miss 3 and then come back for a quarter and then miss 2 and then you're just not going to get any rhythm and it's just awful. It's just throw it away. That's a disaster. But we still got a few more to play. I'd like to see him play if he can. What about with Ertz going down? That's also sad. And nobody else can see a guy in his career that way. And I don't know. I feel terrible for the guy. Will they give Sinnott an opportunity to show anything, or is that train already kind of passed and it's just he is who he is?
I think I'd say I'm kind of in between there because he's gotten opportunities. Like it's funny because people ask about that. And it's almost like he's never played. He does play.
He plays a little bit.
And get a catch.
Yeah, and so but he and Ertz are very different players and different route runners, and they're different strengths. So what I'd be curious to see is if he gets more opportunities. It's also Colson Yankoff, who is probably more.
He seems more athletic, maybe.
Yeah. And so he's more of he would be more of the Ben Sinnott has become a pretty good blocker, and so that's one area he's really developed. But they're also, like I said, they're very different. So if I talked to somebody over there who's like probably better with like play action, boots, and all that. So if you put him, because then you put him in a situation where maybe there's a little bit of space where he can run after the catch, versus like Ertz is better at, you see those, in the red zone, especially the routes that he runs, the precision he runs with, the footwork he shows is just different. And that's not Sinnett's game. So his would be more like, again, boots, rollouts, play action, whatever, just where space maybe is created for him, and then he can run after the catch. So like, that's what I'd be curious to see. Does he do that? So yeah, we'll get a chance to see more of that. And I, like everybody else, like we've seen what we've seen, and it hasn't been enough. If you're like, typically you're going to earn those moments versus being handed to them, right? And has he earned those? But we'll get it now, and that's, I think, a good thing to see going forward, because that's a position that's on the list if he doesn't. But Yankoff's another guy who will get more chances, and he's had some too. So.
And it's hard to be excited for even next season. I mean, when you have a game like this, I mean, the end of the season's one thing, but then like, what's this off season going to be like? How much turnover do you think there's going to be?
A lot. I mean, they only have 34 guys signed for next year already.
Yeah.
So, and then a couple of those guys will probably be released, whether it could be a Lattimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be a lot of turnover, but yeah. And this is the, when you start getting into the draft positioning discussion, this has always been my point, that if you just collapse on the stretch, yes, you get the 5th pick, but if you're collapsing down the stretch, you're going to need a hell of a lot more than the 5th pick to turn this baby around.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what I mean? Now finish strong is also like, if they had lost yesterday, 21-20, it's like, all right, well, it's another competitive game, similar team, right? Okay, it's a little bit different. 31-0 exposes other things. And like, if you have that kind of a finish, then we're looking at a whole different ball game going into next year. Questions about everything about the organization versus, hey, that was just a bad year because of injuries, right? Like that would be so. But yeah, they always knew they needed another good off season to keep this to really build this thing up. But it's like way more than what anybody thought. I mean, you need to get some defensive playmakers, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. The one thing I
Really?
would say in yesterday's game, and maybe something they can carry over into the offseason, is the offensive line looks good. They allowed 2 sacks in the game, and Chris Rodriguez and Bill, when they were given the ball, ran pretty effectively.
Yeah.
I think Rodriguez was over 5 yards a carry. Bill was closing in on that.
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's not much else.
No, you're right though. But if you to build, I agree with you on the offensive line. And when again, watching that yesterday, I was able to watch some of it on the plane ride back last night, where like it was the pressure that they got. It was not because of line shortcomings as much as it was they were fooling them. And that's a hell of a scheme that the blitz scheme that Minnesota uses. But overall, they've been much better lately, right? And so I think that's a building block for sure. And I still think they have the quarterback, just got to stay healthy. So you have that. But beyond that, when you look at the positions, receiver with McLaurin, we don't know what's going to be beyond him at this point, because Noah Brown will be out. I mean, he's a free agent. So is Debo. Like, what do you do there? I think you need to get some young guy in there to help. Tight end, you're going to need somebody unless Sinnett really has a strong finish, right? But defensively, what are the building blocks? How many are there really? That's the question. And I think that's going to be the hard one to really dig into. So,
you just got to hope that Amos comes back healthy, and you got you drafted Sanders still. So,
and I think like I would, and I think yesterday kind of goes to, just to pause on that for a minute. Like when you look at that defense yesterday, part of the problem was they're only playing they want to be a heavy press man team, and they're really right now they are a zone team because you don't have those press man corners in Amos and Lattimore. So I think you still need to get another corner there to play the style. Like yesterday, they again stuck with heavy zone because I don't think they didn't feel comfortable playing man against that group, and I think it leads to an inability for a good offensive minded coach on the other side to pick you apart.
All right, John. Good stuff. 8 straight losses. It's been a tough season for sure. Thanks, pal.
Thanks,
Thanks,
John.
buddy.
Guys.
I just can't believe we are where we are. It's
shocking.
unbelievable.
Well, the
unbelievable.
4 of us on the show range from 10 to 12 wins.
Yep.
That was our preseason predictions.
Turns
I mean,
out they're going to have 10 to 12 losses.
In my worst case,
They already have 10 losses.
Right.
other
They're gonna be in
than
that
Could be
range.
14.
Yeah.
other than like a catastrophic injury to Jayden, I couldn't have seen this.
Impossible.
It's impossible to see this.
Phone number is 1-800-636-1067 if you want to chime in. We'll open up the phone lines. We're going to tackle the next topic, which is Jayden Daniels specifically. And can you find a way to keep this guy healthy? Should he be playing? Should he have been playing? And how do you protect Jayden? We'll tackle that next here on the Junks.